I was like, hi, my name is Chelsea Handler. Do you have any other 10-year-olds that I can play with? They sent this kid named Nelson down, and I was like, Nelson, I'm doing a lemonade stand. I need a bar back. Do you know how to mix a drink?
Today's conversation is the permission you need to go after what you want in life, whether that is flying first class or being unapologetically ambitious or standing up for yourself or speaking your mind or making the changes you want to make.
I just never identified with that. I'm going to grow up and I'm going to get married. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to go to college and I'm going to have kids. I never ever thought that. I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. The more anyone tells me to do something, the less inclined I am to do it.
A lot of people see what's going on and say, I want that. You saw what was going on and said, I don't want that. I cannot wait to hear you tell this story because this blew my mind.
So one of the worst decisions of my life, which was...
Oh my God. Chelsea, I'm so excited that you're here. I mean, on paper, when you look at all your accomplishments from being an iconic comedian for 20 years, 7 New York Times bestsellers, 5 different television shows, you have so many extraordinary experiences, a media company that you are running, serial entrepreneur, and one of the things that I appreciate the most about you is everybody who read this book, I'll Have What She's Having, fell in love with you. And I don't think people understand truly what a remarkable human being you are at your core. That there is a very big difference between the perception or what may have been written and actually at your core, in your purpose, who you have become and the expression that you are in the world. And so I am really thrilled because, like me, you learn this shit the hard way. And this book brilliantly unpacks the mistakes, the regrets, the lessons learned that got you to truly connect with who you are at your core. And we're going to unpack so much of the wisdom in this book, the hilarious stories, but I would love to start by having you speak directly to the person who's with us. And if you think about all of the takeaways in your book and the lessons that you've learned and the things that you want to share, particularly with other women, what could be different about their life if they really take to heart some of the things that you're about to teach us today and they apply it in their own life?
I think that positivity and optimism is contagious, right? While sometimes it feels hopeless and sometimes you are so down, and we can all get into pity parties about what's not going right in our lives. There's always a different lens to look at everything. And no one is perfect at always looking at the positivity in their lives. But when you get better at looking at it more frequently, then that becomes your default. And then there's a magnetism in that. You attract more positivity because you become more positive. And these are all things that when I was younger, in my 30s, I would be like, blah, 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 shut up. I don't want to talk about meditation. I don't want to talk about, everything to me seemed like somebody was leading me to a chakra, you know? But it is scientific. It only matters if you're a person who is really connected to who you are and to being in the moment as much as you possibly can. Then you just become so kind of like a tree. You know, you're a tree. You can like blow on me, but I'm not going to fall over. You know, you can like rustle my leaves and you might blow a few leaves off, but you're not ever going to fuck with the foundation of who I am.
It wasn't always that way, though.
No, I was all over the like shop and house and sky, you know, not grounded, like a leaf, like a leaf on a tree.
Forgetting that you actually have roots.
Yes.
And I think that's a lot of actually what this book is about, is figuring out and remembering who you are at your core.
Also, we lose touch with who we are so often in our lives. So I would say that it is up to you to always get yourself back on the right track. Like you always say, no one's coming to save you. No one is coming to save anyone. Even if you consider yourself someone who saves other people, you can't do the whole job, right? Like, no one is coming to get you. You have to save yourself. And by saving yourself, you're going to save other people.
One of the things that I found fascinating about your story is that from a very, very young age, you had a very clear idea of the kind of person that you wanted to be. In fact, I'm going to read from your New York Times mega bestseller about the vision that you had for yourself. I love this. This is in the very beginning. It's a chapter, The Little Girl. You write, she would be nothing less than fierce, this woman I'd become. She would be confident and never hesitate to stick her neck out for other people. With a mind so sharp, no one would ever call her just a pretty face. She'd be so much more than that. Tell me a little bit about the kind of little girl you were, because not every little kid kind of has a sense of who they are. But you, like, this struck me as like very unique about you.
Yeah, maybe. I would like to instill every little girl with this kind of vision of herself. You know, when I wrote this book, it was with the idea to inject everyone with the self-confidence that people perceive me to have. Like, you know, I wish I had an Ozempic needle of confidence to give everybody and shoot everybody up and be like, you can be self-assured and confident too. But as I've grown up, yes, I was born with a specific type of personality. I mean, I can come across as very confident. But I don't want anyone to think that I have confidence all the time in any way, shape, or form. I've built my confidence, and I've gone through phases where I've had little confidence. But as a very young person, I knew I had something to offer. Not that I was better than anyone, but that I had a vision of the woman that I wanted to be. And that woman was going to be fierce, and she was going to tell the truth, and she wasn't going to be a follower. She was going to be a leader. Like, that was very important to me, that I wasn't just going to do what other people did, that I was going to create a path for myself because I wanted to be an example of womanhood. And this was when I was like 6 or 7 years old. I was thinking about becoming a woman. I'm going to get my hair clip out because I'm going to start sweating. It was like, you know, I just had this idea of what I wanted to be. I just always knew that I wanted to be independent. I wanted to be strong. I wasn't going to rely on anyone, like, or have a husband. Like, that wasn't even in my purview. Or, I mean, I just never identified with that. I'm going to grow up and I'm going to get married. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to go to college and I'm going to have kids. I never ever thought that. I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. The more anyone tells me to do something, the less inclined I am to do it. So I just thought, here's an original plan, you know? And then there were women that I looked up to, or, you know, figures in history where I thought, wow, you know, like, that's cool. Like, I could do this my own way and I can be independent. And I wanted to be, more than anything, I wanted to be a patriarch. Like, to my family. Like, I wanted to be the one who handled everything. So I identified more with like a masculine role than I did with your traditional feminine role, but I am a woman. So that role is there for us to take as well.
Well, I read in this great op-ed that was published in the Wall Street Journal that you wrote, I was a handful growing up. At a young age, I had a very clear understanding that the two people in charge of our family were the two people I had the least confidence in. There was no structure at home and a lot of uncertainty. And what's interesting about your story is that a lot of people see what's going on and say, I want that. You saw what was going on and said, I don't want that.
Right.
And that's an important takeaway, because if you're somebody that's listening or watching right now and you're thinking, how the hell did she have that sense of, I want that shit now and I'm in my 60s? What would you say to a person that's hearing you? Because it is enticing. It is so sexy to hear you state all these things that you want to be. You rarely hear anybody say it like that. with this, like, I want to feel this way. And we should be doing it. So what would you say to somebody who's listening, like, I'll have what she's having?
I would say,
just how do I drink it?
Yeah. First of all, it doesn't matter what age you are. It doesn't matter what your situation is right now. If you're in a marriage that you don't want to be in, or if you're in a job you don't want to be in, or if you're in a city that you don't want to live in, whatever your situation is, even if you're sick, you have the ability to take control of your life and have autonomy over your decisions and not be tethered to anybody else regarding your happiness. Like, we don't have to be responsible for other people's happiness. That's a choice that we can make, but it is not our responsibility to provide other people with happiness. As a comedian, I feel like it is my job to spread joy and sunshine when I'm on stage. I've chosen that to be my job. Like, you can't tell me to do that. Then I won't want to. You know what I mean?
Right. Yes.
And so I think a lot of people, first of all, it doesn't matter how old you are. No one is unrecoverable. You're never cooked. You're here. As long as you're here, you have an opportunity to make your life great. You're a perfect example of that. We all know your story and how you picked yourself up off the floor when you were in your darkest hour. Everybody has the capability and an inner reservoir of strength that many people know nothing about, but it's there.
One of the lessons that I picked up very early on in your book, and I'm going to read you a little bit, and then I cannot wait to hear you tell this story. This is on page 9. It's a chapter called First Class. And this is a lesson about allowing yourself to claim the thing you want, even if it seems ridiculous. And you're literally talking about getting on your very first plane ride across the country to visit your grandparents. You're 10 years old, 4 of us traveling. You board the plane, walk past the first class section, stopped, sniffed around. This seems like my group, I told my mother. And you then the writing was on the wall. If my family was content flying coach for the rest of their lives, we simply weren't on the same page. And I would, at some point, have to split ties with them. At 10 years old, you have this really important thing that you're already doing, where you're allowing yourself to claim something that you want simply because you want it. And then you go a step further, and I would love to have you share the story about what you did next with the lemonade stand, and then how you started to hustle, and then what you did with the money, because this blew my mind.
First of all, I knew I had to start working right away because my parents were just two hot messes, you know? And I was like, oh my God, there's nothing set up for me here. Like, I'm going to have to start working. I'm a child. What can I do? I'm like, okay, what's the lowest hanging fruit? That's a lemonade stand. I'll open up a lemonade stand. I enlisted my older sister. I'm the youngest of 6 children. So that gives you also, you know, when you're the youngest of 6 children, you grow up much quicker than anybody else in the family because you have to. Mm-hmm. You're absorbing everything around you, and your language skills are far superior to anyone else's because you learn how to navigate, negotiate, argue, and win. And so I opened up a lemonade stand. Our business was fine. We were on Martha's Vineyard. That sounds like we came from money. We did not. My dad got a very inexpensive house on Martha's Vineyard. We don't know how he got the money to get that house, but whatever. It was one of the best decisions he's ever made. And we got so many beautiful summers from it. So I opened up a lemonade stand. I said to my sister, Shauna, she was 5 years older, I'm like, do you want to open up a lemonade stand with me? We made like maybe, I don't know, $17, $18, $20. Not enough money for me at that age. I was like, whoa. I think I was probably around 10. And I was like, this isn't going to work. And then I was like, okay, the next best thing is opening up a hard lemonade stand. I'm like, that's what people really want. Whiskey, gin, and tequila. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to my house. I'm going to get some gin, whiskey, and tequila, which was difficult because my parents didn't really drink. So it wasn't even like, you know, good stuff. Like, I think I went to a neighbor's house and got some whiskey from her. And then I told my sister, I'm like, we're going to mix our drinks and we're going to sell the alcohol to the adults and we're going to sell the lemonade to the kids. And anyone, frankly, who's over 10 can also have a cocktail as far as I'm concerned. And my sister's like, we're definitely not doing that. That's illegal. And I was like, well, then you can go take a a hike because you're actually cutting into my profit margin. So I fired her. And then I went around the neighborhood and I would just knock on the door and I would introduce myself like a businesswoman. I was 10 and, wearing like shorts and flip-flops and whatever. And I was like, hi, my name is Chelsea Handler. Do you have any other 10-year-olds that I can play with? And finally, they sent this kid named Nelson down. And I was like, Nelson, I'm doing a lemonade stand. I need a bar back. Do you know how to mix a drink? And he was like, what? I was like, listen, I've seen it on TV. This is all you have to do. And that lemonade stand yielded hundreds of dollars in the first few weeks. I mean, we made so much money. I think by the third week, I had like $700 or $506 or some whatever figure. It's in the book. And then I gave Nelson his commission because now it wasn't my sister. It was a guy that I hired. And I think it was like, say I made $569. I gave him his commission, which was $5.69. And I was like, this is yours, Nelson. And Nelson thought he hit the lottery. He's like, oh my God, $5. He's like, this is crazy. This is more money than I would have made if I had lost 3 teeth in 1 week. And I'm like, Nelson, if you believe in the tooth fairy, we've got bigger problems, But that was my first entrepreneurial endeavor that I realized okay, I'm going to take this into my own hands. I don't need my family. I actually don't need anybody. I just need to figure out an idea. And then I was like, wait a second, I could be making more money. I was 10. I looked older than I was. And I was like, I'll be a babysitter. There's no rules around babysitting, but so I lied and I said I was 15 years old and I called all the hotels in Edgartown, Martha's Vineyard. And I was like, my name is Chelsea Handler. I'm a very experienced babysitter. If you have any guests that are traveling and that need last minute babysitting plans, please call me. This is my number. I still remember my number, 627-5889. And I said, I'm 15 years old. I spent that summer babysitting for a 14-year-old boy as a 10-year-old.
You were as a 10-year-old.
I had this babysitting business for 3 years. And that's how I afforded the first class ticket.
Well, tell that story about what you did with the money.
I used that to buy my first class ticket on the flight.
But what's amazing about this is that you didn't tell, it sounds like in the story you didn't tell your family. So a couple of years later, aren't you flying across country to go to your...
Years later, yeah, I had experienced my first plane ride at 10. That was the impetus for everything. Once I saw that there was a section of people that had more money and could sit in nicer chairs, I was like, I'm going to be in that group. I came back, I started Lemonade. I was like, this isn't enough. I got to do something bigger than this. And then I started my babysitting company. I had tons of clients. I babysat for 5 different families. I had to outsource people. I tried to hire my sister back because I had too many clients. And I saved my money. And then my mom said we were going back to California again when I was 13 to visit my grandfather. And I went down the street to a travel agent that lived on our street and I bought myself a first class ticket. And then I got on the plane. I was with my 2 idiot brothers, Glenn and Roy. And I was on the plane and I didn't say anything because I could not fucking wait to see the looks on their faces. I couldn't wait to see my brothers, the look of disgust that I had figured out a system that they would have loved to figure out. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that I'm 10 years younger than them. I'm the baby sister. I'm this little thing that nobody really took seriously. And I got in my seat, 2C. I had my suitcase. I popped it in the overhead bin. I had little kitten heels on like a businesswoman again. I was like, flying. I better get dressed up. And then they all thought I was kidding. I'm like, I'll see you guys at the end of the flight, and sat in 2C. And then an hour later, my brother came up to my seat and was like, you can't do that. And I'm like, I can't do what? He goes, you can't buy a first class ticket and not give it to one of us or mom. And I was like, first of all, I was drinking also a glass of champagne at that point because they thought I was 21 probably. And I looked at him and I was like, I absolutely can. I was like, first of all, you need to get back to your section and I will see you at the end of the flight.
Can you shut this curtain and get this person bothering me?
Yes. How did you get through the curtain? What kind of, what kind of preventative measure is that curtain? It's not stopping anyone from coming up. So that at that point they knew oh God, she's a real handful. But I had told them from a very very young age, like, watch out and stick with me. I'm going to get us out of this mess. Like, my parents were not financially stable. We were not poor. Like, but we had our phones turned off. We had money problems. It wasn't like we were driving in new cars and I was getting nice clothes. It wasn't like that. I was the youngest of 6, and it was like we had a house, we had stability. I never went hungry, but there was no excess. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I didn't like that. I wanted more for myself, and I wanted more for my family. Like, it wasn't just for me. I was like, I guess I'll have to take care of this family.
What I love about this story, and I realize we're going to get into just the whole trajectory, but I just want to pause right here because I think this is a really inspiring thing to consider in your life. How often do you pass through first class, or you see a beautiful house, or you see somebody pursuing some artistic thing that you've always wanted to do, or you see somebody like who's a decent dancer at a wedding? And you're like, I want to do that.
I would love to be a good dancer.
Right? But then what follows is not, I'm going to go figure that out. What follows is, oh, well, you can't, or I don't deserve that, or people like me don't get to do things like that. We opt out so quickly. And what I love about this story, whether you say it's moxie or it's survival or it's this or it's that, the piece that I love about it that struck me so beautifully is I wish we all, especially as women, could just allow ourselves to want things that we want. And then instead of blocking the desire and invalidating ourselves, we remind ourselves with time and some effort, you can figure that shit out. You can pay for that stuff yourself. You can figure out how to do it. That's what that story illustrates. Even if at every step of the way, people are saying, you can't do that, or you shouldn't do that, or your age makes no sense, you made it make sense. And that is a huge mindset switch that I think we all could use. And it is something that also is becoming consistent with the way you approach things. And I think that's a really cool attribute about you.
Well, thank you. But I also would like to add that there's an unapologeticness that is necessary for women to claim. In addition to everything that you just said, there also has to be not do I deserve this? You deserve whatever you go after, but also don't apologize for wanting more. That's okay too.
Yeah.
I mean, men don't apologize for wanting more. And I don't ever like to make it such a female male thing, but it's become so illustrative in the last, many years to see the divide and to see how women have a harder time claiming what they want and going after they want and having a hard time talking about what they got.
Yes. I want to see a shift in that too. So I'm thrilled that you told that story. So eventually you're like, I'm out of here. I'm out of here. And you get yourself to California. Like, what did you think you wanted to do?
Well, I had to get away from New Jersey, from my family.
Okay.
I had to get away from my family. So like I graduated by the skin of, I was terrible. I was a terrible teenager. I was awful to my parents. I was a mess. My brother died when I was 9. That had a huge impact on the family. It was terrible for our family. My father fell apart at the seams after my brother died. He never quite recovered. And then, so I had lost my brother, and then I had lost my father, and then I became angry that the two men that I admired the most disappointed me and basically abandoned me. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have any outlet. I didn't have therapy. So I just became angry. And so my father and I were like this my whole entire teenage years. So I couldn't wait to get away from them. I couldn't wait to get away from my father specifically. And I went to community college for like a semester after high school where I barely graduated. But I did graduate. And I wasn't interested in school. I was interested in having fun and boys and all of that stuff. And then I said to my parents, like, I think I'm going to go to California. I just felt like that's where I belong. That's where the land of people like me go. People who I felt like a misfit. I felt like I was never going to lead a traditional life. I was like, I think I want to go to California, and I think I'm going to drive. I need a car. My dad was a used car dealer, and I've never seen him more excited to get four new tires for a car in his life. And my dad's like, I'll get you four new tires for the Audi. He had this Audi Quattro, this old Audi Quattro. He was so excited at the prospect of me leaving so that they could finally get a break from me and all of my anger and my drama. And it was great because I got in a car, I drove across country, and all I really needed was a break from my family. We just all needed a break, you know?
Yeah.
And once I got away from them, I started to appreciate them and love them. But I just needed my individuality and I needed to start to pursue my own path. And they totally got that. They were like, go, you can't get out of here fast enough, you know? And then our relationship strengthened because of that. And so I didn't know exactly what I was going to do when I moved to California. I just figured somebody will see something in me.
Oh my God. So how did you get into comedy?
I got a DUI when I was 21 years old, and I was using my sister's ID to drink in California because I moved out there when I was 19. So my mom gave me my sister's birth certificate and I was like, how am I going to get into bars and stuff? And she's like, I'll give you your sister's birth certificate. Don't tell her. You can use her ID.
Go, Mom.
My mom was like, please go too.
Just get out of here.
What are you? We'll give you as much money as we have. Please leave. And so
I just want just the picture of your dad throwing an old car and new tires. Your mom's like, take your sister's birth certificate and the pocket change I have. Goodbye.
Yeah,
good luck. Get out of here.
Call us maybe or don't. We're not worried about it. So I drive out to California and I have an aunt and uncle. They lived in LA. I moved in with them. They had 9 children.
And there was a 2-bedroom house with 9 kids,
children.
4 dogs.
And a parrot.
Yeah.
It was a hot mess. It was ridiculous. And I was like the nanny. Like I'd have to get up and take the kids to school. And then when I was 21, I had moved out of my aunt and uncle's house. I'm sure they had kicked me out because I was all over the shop. Like I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had all this energy and I just was like, what should I do? Should I be an actress? It's like, should I be a model? I'm like, oh, I can't be a model. Like I'm not going to be that skinny. Like what are my options? You know, maybe I'll be and then I got this DUI and I had been using my sister's ID. And even though I had just turned 21, I gave them my sister's ID. So that was a double whoopsie doodle because I was basically using a fake ID and I got a DUI. So I was in Sybil County Women's Prison for 48 hours at LA County Women's Prison, which is a giant room filled with bunk beds and women trading bologna sandwiches for tampons. And I was like, fuck this. Like, what have I done? Like, you need to get your shit together. And my aunt and uncle had to put a lien on their house to get me out of jail. And I got out of jail and I had to go to DUI school, which meant every week I would go to this class and everyone got up in front of the whole class and they had to tell their story. And it was, you know, like shame, you know, like you share your shame.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the whole class was about basically how to get out of your next DUI. The instructor was like, listen, next time you get pulled over, just don't admit to having anything to drink. Okay. I was like, well, this is a little bit weird, but okay. And so I had to do like 500 hours of community service. I had to do all this stuff. But anyway, as soon as I found out you had to speak in front of the class, I would just like hide. I'd get in the back of the class in the last row.
Really? That surprises me.
Yeah, no. I was so scared to death of public speaking. I think most people are.
Yes.
And I would hide. I'd be like, okay, I'm going to get out of this. Like I knew how to do this in school, like how to just disappear and have them forget about you. It went on for like 12 weeks or something. It was the very last class. And I was like, I've done it. And then he's like, Chelsea, you know, you have to get up there. And I got up and I told my DUI story. And it's a pretty funny story. I called the cop racist. We're both white. Like none of the details about the story they were all ridiculous. Like I was outside of my house. Like I passed my house because I was drunk. So, and then as I was telling my story, like everyone started laughing and I just kept going and I got more and more relaxed and it felt amazing. And then finally the instructor came on stage and it was like, okay, this isn't a stand-up comedy club. Like wrap it up. Like you're enjoying this now. It's like the opposite of the point. And I was like, I am enjoying this. And then I got off stage and a bunch of people came up to me. They're like, you have to be a stand-up comedian. That was so funny. Your delivery, your timing, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, I had never thought about that. And I was like, a stand-up comedian. I was like, oh, okay, that's me talking about my own thoughts. I'm not reading a script. I don't have to read somebody else's dialogue. I have total autonomy. And then the next week, I did my first stand-up set ever at the Laugh Factory. I waited outside like from 2 a.m. till like for 24 hours, you had to wait in line. And I got on stage and did 3 minutes of stand-up comedy. So one of the worst decisions of my life, which was getting a DUI, turned into one of the best things that ever happened to me, because I thought maybe I will try stand-up. Maybe that's perfect for me. And then that was it. And then I just started doing stand-up.
You talked about like an Ozempic of confidence. My definition of confidence is the willingness to try.
Yes.
You embody this willingness to try anything. The second that you want something, I'm going to try to get it. The second you have a problem, I got to get away from these people, I'm going to try to do that. And so confidence, in my definition, is just this willingness to try. And it's in the trying that you prove to yourself that you're capable of doing things. That's what builds confidence. And so in every twist and turn, I want you to make sure as you're listening or watching and spending time with me and Chelsea, that you're getting that she's demonstrating just as, oh, I'll try that. Oh, okay, I'm doing that. And so to me, it's fascinating that I don't even know how the hell you prepared to do it. Like if I were going to an open mic night a week from now, I don't even know that I would know how to prepare. Did you do good?
But you would figure it out. You would, because, and there's a difference between trying something over and over again and it not working, right? Or being open-minded enough to try something for the very first time.
True.
Right?
Yes.
So sometimes I wouldn't want to tell you to say, oh, okay, keep doing something and beating your head against a wall, but definitely be open-minded enough to make a fool out of yourself one time, because who knows, maybe it'll work out.
That's true.
Like you say that all
Maybe
the
it'll
time.
work out.
Maybe it'll work out. And guess what? It did work out. And it took me a long time to gain the confidence that I have now after doing it for probably 25 years. No, I was 21. So it's even more than that. But it took for years and years and years, but I knew that I was onto something, and I just continued to do that. And it was a crazy circumstance that led me there, but also part of the ridiculousness that is my life and story, and not to shy away from that. I'm not proud of getting a DUI, but it's part of how I figured out what I was going to do with my life.
Yeah.
Your biggest disappointments and your biggest failures can lead to your biggest successes if you keep your eyes and your ears open and your head up.
Well, funny you should say that, because you bust your ass for 5 years and then you get your first big break in Montreal and it doesn't go according to plan. So tell us that story.
This is a good story for you to hear. I was the next it girl for this Montreal Comedy Festival, which is basically, at the time, was the festival to get recognized in this industry, or in this stand-up industry. If you're at that festival, you're on the map. People know who you are. Everyone in the industry that can make decisions about your career is going to be there. There was a lot of buzz about me going to Montreal. I had a special showcase. Everyone who was anyone was coming to that show. Everybody. And I bombed badly. And I had practiced this set. It was a 10-minute set, but just based on everyone's reaction right away, I lost my confidence, and I was like, I started rushing, and I was talking too fast, and I was like, knew it wasn't going well.